Well, look, the way it started, Gore didn't bring any climate scientists. He just made it up himself and wrote this manifesto in
from that?
92. And he said, oh, my Harvard professor agrees with me. Meanwhile, his Harvard professor, Roger Revelle, is writing articles saying, don't listen to Al Gore. And Gore got caught.
A new film challenging the climate change narrative is set to hit Australia next month with screenings in Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, and Melbourne. Joining us now is the director of The Climate According to AI, Al Gore. Joel Gilbert, thanks for coming on. What's your film about?
Great to be here. Thank you. This film is very entertaining. I actually researched the life of Al Gore because he was kind of the godfather of the climate movement. It's Al Gore that brought climate science into politics. He actually started it back in 1992 with his book, Earth in the Balance. That was kind of his big climate manifesto. And he claimed for years, including with his 2006 film, An Inconvenient Truth, where climate science kind of burst onto the scene and took over all of our media, education, and politics. He claimed for years in that film and in that book that he got his climate science from his Harvard professor named Roger Revelle. Now, Gore was no scientist, so he had to claim that he got this incredible idea that you can't use too much carbon, and that there's too much carbon in the atmosphere, the sky is going to fall, and we only have 10 years to live before the earth cannot be recovered and the oceans are going to rise, all these stories. But he claimed it came from his mainstream Harvard professor. So I decided to do some research, and it was actually because of an Australian connection. John Ruddock, the Libertarian member of Parliament in New South Wales, who I think is one of your better politicians in Australia. I hope he'll be Prime Minister there one day, certainly. But he had written about Roger Revelle, Al Gore's professor, and he turned me on to some articles he wrote. So I decided to go down to the University of San Diego, where Roger Revelle's papers were stored. And I looked at hundreds of his folders of articles he wrote and his course where he taught Al Gore at Harvard University. And I found out that Al Gore lied about what Roger Revelle was saying, because Roger Revelle simply asked questions about the atmosphere and he took measurements. He never said that he thought there was too much carbon. He completely disagreed with Al Gore, and he even wrote an article called Look Before You Leap, telling people don't listen to Al Gore. So I found that Gore misrepresented the source of his climate science, and I continued on this path of research and thought, well, where in the world did Gore get this apocalypse from? And it turns out he got it from studying at Vanderbilt Divinity School in 1971 with these radical environmental professors. And on his coursework there, he actually was required to read this book from the 1940s called Our Plundered Planet. And it was about a climate apocalypse, saying that man was destroying the world and we're all going to die one day because man is using too many resources. So I realized that Gore plagiarized this book, Our Plundered Planet, when he wrote Earth in the Balance. So in my film, I show you that the foundation of climate science is a fraud, that Al Gore lied about where he got it from, and that he was a politician trying to get political support. That's why he embraced this environmentalism. And I do it in a very unique and entertaining way, because I actually used to work for Al Gore. I was an intern for Al Gore when he was a U.S. Senator from Tennessee. I'm from Tennessee originally. So Al Gore knows me, and I actually ran into him a few years ago. So I wrote him an email and said, look, I've researched your Harvard professor, Roger Revelle, and I want to interview you. He doesn't respond. So I realized, I said, wait a minute, I could create an Al Gore from AI technology. So that's what I did. I created a video of Al Gore and his voice, and I actually interview Al Gore, and we have an honest Al Gore who tells the truth about his whole life history and about the real foundation of climate science. So that's a long answer, but it's a very entertaining movie, and it's based on a whole lot of research.
Okay, sounds fascinating, but I want to firstly point out that you're throwing John Ruddock under the bus here. You're blaming John for this film, is that right?
Well, John certainly became friendly with him on Twitter, and he shared a speech that he gave in Parliament on video.
It was a yes or no question. Do you blame John Ruddock for this film?
I would definitely give him some of the credit.
I love it. Now, I think you kind of answered it, but what's the difference between AI Al Gore and real Al Gore? Because, somebody that's covered a lot of climate change protests and a lot of events surrounding this issue, I've noticed that most of the people participating do feel robotic. Is there a real difference, or is it just that the robot tells the truth?
My AI version tells the truth. I read 6 Al Gore biographies. I read hundreds of articles. I went to the archives, and I got a version of the truth. And when I speak to Al Gore in the movie, he's telling the truth. It's actually a video of Al Gore in his own voice. You think it must be him, because the real Al Gore is a failed politician. He's not very smart, and he's somebody that repeatedly lied about where he got his climate science from, and made these apocalyptic predictions about the ocean rising and the ice caps melting and the sky is falling, and he's absolutely dishonest. So I think it's more interesting that I'm talking to the AI Al Gore, because we do get an honest description of his life history and his climate science. The real Al Gore, people don't know his whole history, which we learn in the film, is that his father was a U.S. senator, and Gore was actually raised to be president. They indoctrinated him to have ambitions to be a politician, be president one day. The problem is Gore did not have a personality for politics. He didn't have any charisma. So he always felt he needed issues to be able to run for the White House, to make himself popular, because he knew he didn't have a good personality for it. So Gore in the early 80s decided to make himself an arms control expert in order to gain support and to get kind of middle America to follow him. It was during the Reagan years. And Reagan won the Cold War, and the arms control issue was no longer a big deal. That's when Gore turned to environmentalism in the late 80s, when I worked with him, because he thought environmentalism was an issue that crossed all class lines. Americans were very concerned about the environment at the time. We had the Chernobyl disaster. There was the Exxon Valdez spill. So he thought that was an issue that could propel him to the White House, and that's why he came up with this, apocalypse in Earth in the Balance. And he didn't tell the truth. He didn't say, I learned this from my wacky environmental professors at divinity school, and I plagiarized a book from the 1940s, because no one would have listened to him. So he lied and said that, I got it from my Harvard professor, which turns out to be a very big lie. And that's a major research that I reveal in this film, that the foundation of climate science was based on a complete fraud by Al Gore.
When did you release this film? And have you heard from Al Gore, non-AI Al Gore, since you've released it?
Well, the film is actually being released on December 10th. It's not released yet. We're doing a promotional tour in Australia to kind of kick off the festivities.
Oh, so this is where you're launching it?
Correct. It's kind of a promotional launch. We're showing it at CPAC in Brisbane on October 3rd. Going to show it at Parliament House, the New South Wales Theatre, as well as some theaters in Melbourne and Sydney. And no, Al Gore has not contacted me yet. I hope I won't be hearing from his lawyers, but we made it very clear.
About that?
No, because we made it very clear it is AI Al Gore. We're not pretending it's actually Al Gore. So I don't think there'll be a problem.
Where can people see or how can they find the details of your tour here in Australia?
Yeah, just go to the website for the film. It's climatealgore.com. Climatealgore.com. You can see the movie trailer. And on the screenings page, you can go to any of these screenings are listed and click on the screening in Brisbane, Melbourne, New South Wales Parliament House in Canberra, in Sydney. And please come down. We're going to have a question and answer with myself and John Ruddick after each screening. I'll be there. And it'll be a lot of fun. You'll learn a lot. And, hope to see you and your friends in Australia.
We're looking forward to it, and I hope you're swimming here so that you don't leave us a carbon footprint flying, jet setting into Australia.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me today.
If you think it's important for Aussies to at least listen to another perspective, not one that's being rammed down our throats from the entire establishment, make sure to like, comment, but most importantly, share it far and wide, because I guarantee that this tour is not going to get the publicity it deserves, because they don't want people to know about the other side to this story. And then head over to buildourstudio.com. As you can see, now we're interviewing people overseas easily because of your help in building this state-of-the-art studio. But there are some final bills to cover. Buildourstudio.com. We're almost there, and I know we're going to get there eventually, but it's up to you. I need your help to do it. Buildourstudio.com.